Welcome back, guys. After a long time, I'm back with a brand new tutorial video. In this video, we're going to learn step by step how to create this viral Google Drive UI animation in Alight Motion. So, without further ado, let's get started. First, import all the assets. You'll find everything you need in the description below. Select all the assets and group them together, so it's easier to resize and adjust everything at once. Once that's done, add the background. Change its color to a soft bluish white instead of pure white for a cleaner, premium look. Now, rename your project and ungroup the assets again. The next step is important. Link each element to its respective parent layer, exactly as I'm doing. This will make the animation process much more organized. Start animating the parent layers using position keyframes. Then, apply an ease-out graph to the position animation for a more natural movement. Next, add rotation keyframes to the same parent layers. Apply the same easing graph to give the motion a polished, premium feel. Repeat the same process for the other two. Once everything is in place, enable motion blur on all the layers to make the animation smoother and more realistic. Now, group all the layers together again, so we can animate the entire UI as a single object. Before adding any animation, make sure the anchor point is perfectly centered. This ensures the rotation happens around the middle of the design. Add scale keyframes and animate the group just like I'm doing. Then create a subtle rotation animation towards the end to apply an ease-in curve for a smoother finish. After that, create a null layer and link the grouped layer to it. Instead of scaling the group directly, animate the null layer's scale property. Finally, add a bounce curve to the scale animation. This small detail gives the UI a satisfying, lively bounce and makes the whole Google Drive animation feel more dynamic and professional. Now, create a second null layer and connect null 1 to it. This will give us better control over the entire animation. Animate the position property of null 2, moving it slightly to the left at the second keyframe. This creates a smooth transition into the next section. Next, add a text layer and adjust its size and placement just like I'm doing. Once you're happy with the layout, head over to Effects and apply the Text Transform effect. Adjust the effect settings as shown on the screen to achieve the same look. Then, animate the text layer's position so it enters smoothly from the left side. Apply an ease-out graph to make the movement feel natural and polished. Now create a third null layer. Link both null 2 and the text layer to null 3 so we can animate everything together without affecting the individual animations. Animate the position property of null 3 to transition into the next scene. Follow the movement shown on the screen and apply an ease-in graph for a clean and seamless exit. Now it's time to create the second scene. Add a rounded rectangle shape layer and adjust its X and Y positions along with the roundness value as shown on the screen. This will form the base of our design. Add another shape, resize it, change its color, and tweak the remaining properties to match the design. Position it on the left side of the rounded rectangle. Next, add another text layer. You won't be able to see it at first because its color matches the background, but we'll fix that in the next step. To give the text a premium look, apply the gradient overlay effect. Choose the two colors shown on the screen and adjust the gradient angle until it matches the design. Now, animate the opacity of both layers from 0% to 100% to create a smooth fade-in effect. Let's animate the text layer as well. Add position keyframes so the text enters from right to left, matching the direction of the previous transition and keeping the animation flow consistent. Next, animate the rotation property of the shape layer to add a bit of dynamic motion and make the scene feel more alive. Finally, I've added a text spacing effect to the text layer for a cleaner and more premium appearance. Adjust the values to match the look shown on the screen. Now create another null layer and link all the current layers to it. This will allow us to animate the entire scene together while keeping everything organized. Next, import the cursor PNG. Make sure you do not link it to the new null layer because we'll be animating the cursor independently for a more realistic interaction. To synchronize the movements, let's first add markers on the timeline. These markers will help us line up the animations perfectly. Start by animating the null layer. Add position keyframes at the marked points on the timeline. At the middle keyframe, move the null layer slightly upward to create a subtle floating effect. Apply a combination of ease out and ease in graphs to make the movement smooth and natural. Now, at those same markers, add rotation keyframes to the null layer. Create a gentle rotation by adjusting the middle keyframe, just as shown on the screen. Apply the same easing curves so both the position and rotation animations blend seamlessly. With the main animation complete, it's time to bring the cursor to life. Add a position keyframe for the cursor layer 1 marker before the null layer animation begins. Then, place the second keyframe where the cursor and null layer animations first align. At the first keyframe, position the cursor slightly lower so it naturally moves into the scene. Apply an ease out graph to make the cursor movement feel smooth and responsive. Move to the next marker on the timeline and continue adding position keyframes. Animate the cursor's path exactly as shown on the screen. Next, animate the rotation property of the cursor. Add subtle rotation keyframes to match its movement and make every interaction feel more realistic. Finally, apply the same easing graphs used throughout the animation. Keeping the motion curves consistent helps the cursor blend naturally with the rest of the scene and gives the entire Google Drive UI animation a polished, professional finish. Now, enable motion blur for all the layers to make every movement smoother and more realistic. Create another null layer and link both the cursor layer and the previous null layer to it. This will let us control the entire interaction with a single animation. Let's animate this new null layer. Add scale keyframes, and, at the middle keyframe, slightly reduce the scale to create a subtle pressing effect. This small detail makes the interaction feel much more dynamic. Next, animate the opacity of both the shape layer and the text layer. Fade them out smoothly, then trim both layers since we won't need them later in the animation. Now let's animate the base rectangular shape. Add scale keyframes. Apply a bounce curve to give it a lively, responsive feel. To make the motion even more engaging, add rotation keyframes to the base shape. Simply adjust the rotation value and create a middle keyframe for a subtle tilt effect. Apply the same easing curves shown on the screen to keep the animation consistent. Next, split the rectangular base layer at the required point in the timeline. This gives us more flexibility for the upcoming animations. Now, reanimate the cursor layer. Adjust its position keyframes to match the interaction and guide the viewer's attention naturally through the scene. It's time to create another composition, so follow along carefully. Build the first layer as shown, then repeat the same process for the remaining 3 layers. Once all 4 are ready, group them neatly to keep the project organized. To create a cascading animation effect, offset each layer by a few frames. This simple technique adds depth and makes the motion feel much smoother. After completing the animation, copy all 4 layers and paste them into the main composition, exactly as shown on the screen. Link these newly added layers to the appropriate Null layer so they can be animated together without affecting their individual movements. Next, create another shape layer and adjust it to match the design. Once it's ready, link it to the rectangular base shape layer so both elements move in sync. Now animate the cursor layer again by adjusting its position keyframes to match the interaction shown on the screen. Make sure the cursor movement feels natural and follows the flow of the animation. Move the cursor layer above all the other layers in the timeline so it remains visible throughout the interaction. Finally, animate the newly created shape layer based on the cursor's movement. Synchronizing the shape with the cursor creates a realistic UI interaction and ties the entire sequence together with a smooth, professional finish. Alright guys, that's it for part 1. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. See you in the next one.